They told you the tree of life was a symbol, a religious artifact, a piece of spiritual art for mystics and scholars. But what if it was more than that? What if it wasn't just something to study, but something to awaken? Because the tree of life, the central glyph of Kabbalistic mysticism, isn't just a diagram. It's a blueprint of the universe, of the soul, of creation itself. This isn't about religion. It's about architecture, the invisible scaffolding of reality. You've seen the tree, 10 spheres connected by 22 lines, arranged in a pattern that looks deceptively simple. But behind that pattern is a multi-dimensional map, a map of how the infinite becomes form, how light becomes matter, how the one becomes the many, and then returns. The ancients didn't create the tree, they decoded it. It was always there, woven into the structure of reality, like the Fibonacci spiral in a seashell or the golden ratio in a sunflower. It appears in sacred geometry, in alchemy, in the nervous system, in the constellations, in your own consciousness. The tree of life is a fractal of divinity, a diagram of emanation, separation, and reunion, a living flowchart that shows how Source, the infinite, boundless divine, unfolds itself into you. It begins with Keter, the crown, the absolute, the unknowable divine spark. From there, it unfolds through wisdom and understanding into love, power, beauty, until finally, it touches the physical plane Malkuth, the kingdom, the earth, the body, the now. This isn't philosophy, it's spiritual physics. Because the tree doesn't only describe the world, it generates it. Just like DNA doesn't just describe a human, it builds one. And here's the most powerful part. The tree of life doesn't just exist out there, it exists in you. Your thoughts move through its pathways. Your emotions swirl through its spheres. Your desires, fears, dreams, they all play out across its architecture. The tree is your inner technology, a sacred interface between matter and spirit. It is the spine of the soul. Mystics of old spent lifetimes walking this tree inwardly, mapping its paths not just with words, but with experience. Each sephira, each connection, is a state of consciousness. Each path is a challenge, an awakening, a layer of memory returning. When you dream of climbing, when you feel lost and then remember something ancient within you, when you align breath, thought, and intention, you're walking the tree. And when you understand that, you stop searching outside yourself for God, because you realize you are the tree. Its root is in the earth, its crown is in the stars, and its branches are your becoming. This is not belief. This is the blueprint of becoming. And the deeper you look, the more it begins to come alive. The tree of life didn't begin in textbooks. It didn't start in seminars or YouTube videos. It began in whispers, in caves, in temples, lit by firelight and silence. Long before the word Kabbalah ever appeared, the blueprint we now call the tree was already alive, passed through lineages of mystics, encoded in myth, hidden in geometry, buried beneath doctrine. The word Kabbalah comes from the Hebrew kaibal, meaning to receive. But this was not information to memorize. It was transmission, an ancient current of truth, passed not just through language, but through vibration, symbol, and direct knowing. Traditionally, Kabbalah is linked to Jewish mysticism, but the tree itself is older, far older. In fact, many esoteric scholars believe that the version we call Kabbalah is just one stream in a river that stretches across continents and civilizations. Its roots, you can find them in Egypt, in the teachings of Thoth and the geometry of the pyramids, in Babylon, among the priest astronomers who charted the heavens, in India, within the chakra system and Vedic cosmology, in Greece, with the Neoplatonists and the mystery schools, in Sumer, in cuneiform tablets that hint at a structured descent of divine energy into form. Even the Tree of Eden, from the Genesis story, is a distorted memory of this primordial structure. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil were not two separate trees. They were two aspects of one truth, that consciousness has the ability to know and to create, to descend and to return. Over time, this sacred map was preserved by those who remembered hidden in the oral traditions of the Merkava mystics, who meditated on celestial chariots, by the Hasidei Ashkenaz in medieval Europe, and in secret societies that kept the flame alive through persecution and exile. Why the secrecy? Because this was dangerous knowledge, not dangerous in the way a weapon is, but dangerous to systems built on ignorance. Because when you give people the keys to the divine architecture, you set them free from dependence on priests, kings, and empires. You teach them to navigate reality from within, not to obey it from without. And for those in power, there is no greater threat than a population that remembers it can create. So the tree was encrypted, wrapped in allegory, encoded in letters, numbers, geometry, split into fragments, scattered across cultures, waiting to be reassembled. Through the ages, it re-emerged in different forms. In Hermeticism, as the chain of being; in alchemy, as the great work, the transformation of lead into gold, ego into soul; in Christian mysticism, as the ladder of angels descending and ascending to God; in the Renaissance, when scholars like Pico della Mirandola and Cornelius Agrippa brought Kabbalistic thought back into Western awareness. Each time it surfaced, it was altered, slightly adapted to the age, cloaked in symbols, and yet still true at its core. Because the tree doesn't belong to one tradition, it belongs to consciousness itself. It is the language of light translated into form. And now, in our time, the age of remembering the tree is returning again. Not through religion, but through resonance. You feel it, don't you? In sacred geometry, in the call to inner alignment, in the intuition that your life follows a pattern, a journey, a structure deeper than chaos. That's the tree, calling you back. It's not a doctrine. It's not a system to follow. It's a living technology, and it's waking up inside you. If the tree of life is a map, then the Sephiroth, the 10 luminous spheres, are not locations, but realms of consciousness. They are not intellectual ideas. They are states of being vibrating with divine attributes. Each Sephira is a lens through which the infinite expresses itself into form. Together, they create a chain of emanation from pure divine thought to tangible reality, from formless source to embodied existence, and back again. You've likely seen the diagram. 10 circles, arranged in 3 columns, connected by lines. But what you're looking at isn't a flat drawing. It's a multi-dimensional frequency map. Each Sephira is alive. Each one speaks a different energetic truth. And they're not just out there in the cosmos. They live inside you. Let's begin at the top. 1. Keter the crown, the highest, most unknowable Sephira. This is pure consciousness, the divine spark before thought, before division, before identity. It is not something you can grasp, only something you can become. In moments of pure stillness, pure awe, or mystical union, you are momentarily touching Keter. It is the infinite silence at the beginning of creation. 2. Chokmah wisdom, From the void, a flash of insight, the divine masculine energy, the seed of all form. Chokmah is the surge of inspiration, unfiltered, raw, electric. It's the yes before the how, the lightning bolt of the cosmos. 3. Bina understanding, the womb that receives the seed of Chokmah and gives it structure. This is divine feminine intelligence, not intuition, but form. Bina is the architect, the shaper, the container. It brings boundaries to chaos. Chokmah is the river. Bina is the riverbank. Together, these first three form the supernal triangle, the realm of pure spirit. Then the energy descends into the world of soul. 4. Hesed mercy, loving kindness, the expansive force of divine love. Abundance, generosity, flow. Hesed is the open hand, the wide embrace. It teaches you how to give without needing to receive. In your life, it shows up as compassion, grace, benevolence. 5. Gevurah, judgment, strength, discipline, boundaries, precision, the necessary container that keeps Hesed from becoming chaos. Without Gevurah, love becomes indulgence. It is not cruelty, it is sacred order, the no that protects the yes. 6. Tiferet, beauty, per hectare harmony, the heart of the tree, the point where spirit and soul meet in balance. It harmonizes mercy and judgment, love and discipline. Tiferet is your soul's true identity, not your ego, not your role, but your essence, radiant, balanced, beautiful. These three, Hesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, form the emotional body of the tree. Then we descend into the mental realm. 7. Netzach, victory, endurance, the force of passion, ambition, creative drive. Netzach is movement, persistence, the pulse that propels you forward. It is desire without apology, the engine behind art, music, seduction, prayer. 8. Hod, glory, surrender, the balancing force to Netzach. Where Netzach is raw fire, Hod is refinement, ritual, language. Hod teaches us the power of systems, of logic, of humility. It governs the mind and how it reflects the soul. 9. Yesod, foundation, the realm of the subconscious, dreams, sex, and memory. Yesod is the filter between the inner world and the outer one. It is the moon, reflective, emotional, intuitive. In magic and manifestation, everything passes through Yesod before it becomes real. It is the bridge between energy and form. And finally, 10. Malkuth, the kingdom, the physical world, the earth, the body, matter itself. But Malkuth is not lesser. It is the fulfillment of all the upper realms. It is the divine made visible. To touch the earth with awareness is to awaken the whole tree. These 10 Sephiroth are not stairs to climb, they are frequencies to integrate. You do not ascend the tree by escaping your humanity. You ascend by embodying divinity within your humanity. Each Sephira has a shadow when distorted. Mercy without boundaries becomes chaos. Discipline without love becomes tyranny. Wisdom without understanding becomes arrogance. Physicality without spirit becomes heinous. But when balanced, they become the full spectrum of your soul's light. And this is the great secret. The tree is not something you master by reading about it. You master it by living it, by meditating on its spheres, by walking its paths, by recognizing each moment in your life as a mirror of a divine attribute. Are you being asked to show compassion? That's chesed. Are you setting a sacred boundary? That's Gevurah. Are you pulled toward beauty and truth? That's Tiferet calling you home. The tree is alive in you, Its branches reach into your thoughts. Its roots ground your body in this world, and its crown is waiting for you to remember. The Tree of Life is not just a map of the universe. It is the journey of the soul from source into form and back again. Every life you live, every challenge you face, every moment of awakening you experience is a movement through this sacred diagram. You were never dropped randomly into a chaotic world. You were seeded through the Sephiroth. You are an emanation of the divine in motion. But this motion is not a straight line. It spirals, loops, ascends, falls, and then rises again. This is the path of the soul, and the tree is your compass. Let's go back to the beginning. In the unmanifest realm, before duality, before desire, before thought, there is Keter the crown. You existed there, not as a person, not even as a soul, but as pure potential, in unity with all that is. This is the place before incarnation, before identity. Some traditions call it Godhead, others call it Source. In Kabbalah, it is called the Ein Sof, the infinite, the boundless light. From that oneness, a ripple begins, a descent, a divine inhale. The soul, still pure, moves into Chokmah wisdom, a flash of inspiration, the seed of identity, the first stirrings of I Am, then into Bina understanding. The spark becomes a shape. A soul begins to differentiate. Masculine and feminine energies take form. From the formless, you move into structure. From divine essence, you begin to remember yourself as a soul. And then begins the descent through the tree from pure spirit to incarnation. At Hesed, you remember love, not as emotion, but as the boundless giving force of creation. You feel the joy of offering, of connection, of purpose. Then comes Gevura, the first challenge, the introduction of form, of limits, of choice. You are given shape, boundaries, karma, destiny. The soul begins to understand that love without structure is chaos. Discipline without compassion is tyranny. In Tiferet, you meet your divine heart. You remember the truth of who you are, not the surface you, not the name or personality, but the radiant, eternal center of your being. This is where your soul's voice speaks the loudest. And yet the journey continues, because now you must bring that light into the world. At Netzach, you feel the fire of desire, willpower, and passion. You want to create, to express, to manifest, but if unchecked, that desire burns wild. So you enter Had, the realm of intellect, reflection, and clarity. Here, your mind begins to refine your passion, translating it into language, ritual, and action. Together, Netzach and Had teach you to move with purpose, not blindly, but consciously, not from ego, but from soul. And then comes Yesod, the foundation, the place of dreams, memory, the subconscious. This is where everything from above is stored, filtered, and prepared for birth. Yesod is the womb of manifestation. It holds your patterns, your beliefs, your echoes of past lives and future visions. And finally, Malkuth, the kingdom, earth, the now. This is where you arrive, not as a soul in theory, but as a soul in skin, flesh, breath, pain, pleasure, duality. The light from Keter has reached full expression. You are here, not by accident, not as punishment, but as the culmination of divine descent. Malkuth is not exile. It is the final note of a cosmic song, the final brushstroke of divine artistry. It is the point where all spiritual theory becomes living truth But the journey doesn't stop at the bottom, because every descent invites an ascent. Once grounded in the world, the soul begins to climb back up, not to escape, but to integrate, to bring the wisdom of Gevura into your relationships, to balance Netzach and Hod in your creative work, to radiate Tiferet through your service, to touch Bina and Chokmah in meditation, to align with Keter in end stillness. The ascent is not linear. You move through Sephiroth over and over, each time with more depth, more awareness. You are both student and master, wanderer and mapmaker. And with each cycle, you come closer to what the mystics call tikkun, not just personal healing, but the restoration of divine order within yourself and the world. Because your soul's path through the tree is not just for you. Every step you take sends ripples into the collective field. You awaken pieces of the tree in others. You become a living channel for the reunification of heaven and earth. And this is the hidden truth. The tree is not just a symbol of the universe. It's a symbol of your story. And it's not finished yet. You've seen the tree of life drawn on scrolls, studied in mystical texts, or discussed in esoteric circles. But what if I told you the tree isn't out there? What if I told you it's already inside you, not as a metaphor, but as an actual energetic architecture embedded in your body, your breath, your consciousness? Because the greatest secret of Kabbalah isn't just that the tree maps the cosmos. It's that it mirrors your inner world, your energy body, your nervous system, your mind, your soul. The tree is not a diagram to be studied. It's a living structure to be embodied. Let's begin with your physical form. Stand upright, feet planted, crown lifted. This is the vertical alignment of the tree. Malkuth is your root, the base of your spine, your connection to earth, your survival, your physicality. Keter is your crown, your connection to source, to divinity, to infinite awareness. And everything in between? The Sephiroth are reflected in your chakras, your glands, and your psycho-emotional centers. This is not coincidence. It's universal design. Many mystics throughout time across cultures have noticed the uncanny parallels between the tree of life and the energetic body known from Eastern systems like yoga and Taoism. The Kabbalistic tree and the yogic chakra system are not separate inventions. They are two languages describing the same anatomy of the soul. Yesod, the foundation, aligns with the sacral chakra, the seat of creativity, sexuality, and subconscious memory. Tiferet, the heart of the tree, corresponds to the heart chakra, the center of compassion, inner truth, and soul identity. Gevura and Chesed, on either side of Tiferet, reflect the polarities of the solar plexus, will and surrender, discipline and flow. Bina and Chokmah, the left and right hemispheres of the supernal realm, mirror the dual nature of your brain, logical and intuitive, linear and non-linear. And just like the Kundalini serpent rests at the base of the spine, waiting to rise, so too does the divine light of Keter descend, waiting to be remembered, reawakened, reunified within the body. Your spine is the tree, your breath, the wind that moves through its branches, your awareness, the light that flows through its channels. Even the paths that connect the Sephiroth are not just theoretical. They correspond to your nervous system, your nadis, your meridians. Every path is a neural network of potential waiting to be relit with awareness. And when you meditate on the tree, not just as a symbol, but as your energetic self, you begin to feel it. You may feel pressure at your crown when touching Keter, warmth in your heart with Tiferet, a deep groundedness in your hips when entering Malkuth, a tingling in your palms when activating Chesed and Gevurah, because you're not imagining it, you're activating it. This is what initiates across time were trained to do. In the temples of ancient Egypt, the initiates passed through inner chambers that mirrored the Sephiroth. In the cathedrals of Europe, the rose windows, spiral staircases, and sacred geometry were built to trigger the body into remembering its divine structure. In the Eastern monasteries, breath and mantra activated the same inner tree, just under different names. Because once you awaken this structure, you are no longer limited by what the world tells you you are. You remember that you are not a meat suit. You are not your thoughts. You are not your trauma. You are a living interface between heaven and earth, a conduit of divine force, a channel through which infinite potential becomes visible. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of as above, so below. Because the cosmos and the body are one. The tree of life is not separate from the Milky Way, nor is it separate from your spine. The mystics were not being poetic when they said, God dwells within. They meant it literally. Your energy field is a temple. The Sephiroth are your sacred architecture, and the paths between them are roads you've walked for lifetimes, forgotten until now. And here's the mystery they don't want you to discover. Once you awaken the tree inside you, you become the gateway to intuition, to healing, to vision, to creation itself. Your thoughts become more coherent. Your emotions begin to harmonize. Your body begins to regenerate. And reality, your external life, begins to mirror the order you've reestablished within. Because when the tree is awakened within, chaos begins to collapse without. This is embodiment. This is alchemy. This is you, returning to your original design. You are not walking the tree. You are becoming it. And from that place, you remember what it means to create. The tree of life was never meant to sit flat on parchment, trapped between the pages of mystical books. It was designed to be used not as decoration, not as theory, but as a living tool, a spiritual instrument for ascension, manifestation, and conscious evolution. Because here is the forgotten truth. The tree doesn't just describe the journey of creation, it's a key to creating reality itself. Just like your body holds dormant codes waiting to be awakened, the tree of life is a diagram of how potential becomes actual, how thought becomes form, how spirit becomes matter, how the unseen becomes seen. This is why mystics across the ages didn't just study the tree, they walked it. They climbed it in meditation. They used it as a template for ritual, for healing, for divine communion. They understood that each Sephira is a portal not just to knowledge, but to power. But not power in the way the modern world defines it. Not control, not conquest, co-creation. When you work with the tree, you begin to harmonize your internal energy field with the structure of the universe. You shift out of chaos and into coherence. The process is both sacred and practical. Let's say you want to manifest something, a relationship, a purpose, healing, abundance. You don't start in Malkuth, in the physical. You begin in Keter, the divine spark, the first impulse, the pure intention beyond ego. From there, the energy flows into Chokmah, the creative idea, the vision, then into Bina, understanding, structure, and form. Next, you channel it through Chesed, infusing it with generosity and expansion. Then refine it with Gevurah, applying focus and necessary boundaries. In Tiferet, you align the intention with your heart's truth. This is the center, the filter that determines whether your desire is pure or distorted by ego. You then move it through Netzach into emotional energy, persistence, drive, into Hod, shaping it with language, strategy, logic. Through Yesod, the subconscious processes it, where the desire is either accepted or blocked, depending on your inner beliefs and past experiences. And finally, if all is aligned, it is birthed into Malkuth, manifested, embodied, real. This is manifestation not as fantasy, but as spiritual physics. The tree is not superstition. It is a technology of consciousness. But here's what most people miss. If one sephira is distorted, the energy halts. If the will is there, Netzach, but not the structure, Bina, the vision remains a dream. If the idea is pure, Kete, but the heart isn't aligned, Tiferet, it never reaches Yesod. If the subconscious holds trauma, Yesod, it blocks the manifestation in Malkuth. This is why most attempts to manifest fail, because people focus only on the outer layers, but manifestation requires alignment at every level of the tree. The mystics knew this. They used the tree like an inner map to check where energy was flowing and where it was stuck. They would meditate on each sephira, chant its divine name, visualize its light, reflect on its emotional and energetic quality. They didn't pray for outcomes. They aligned with outcomes. And in doing so, they became channels for divine will. This is what the alchemists called the great work to bring heaven into earth, to unite spirit and matter through the human vessel. And that vessel is shaped like the tree. Here's something even more astonishing. The 22 paths that connect the 10 Sephiroth correspond to the Hebrew letters, the Tarot's major arcana, and the archetypal experiences of the soul. Each path represents a trial, a revelation, a transformation. When you walk the tree, even symbolically, you're reactivating ancient memory. You're stepping into a ritual passed down not through dogma, but through geometry, frequency, and resonance. And once you begin working with it intentionally, not as a student, but as a participant, you notice something subtle but profound. Your reality begins to shift. Not because you've forced anything, but because you've tuned your inner architecture to match the divine design. That's when synchronicities appear. Doors open, healing accelerates, ideas click into place. And more than anything, you begin to feel whole again. Because the tree doesn't just help you manifest, it helps you remember who you are. Not just a fragment, not just a seeker, but a walking embodiment of the divine pattern. The tree of life is not just a symbol of ascension, it is the vehicle. And once you enter it fully, honestly, with reverence, you don't just climb toward God. You realize you are the bridge. If the tree of life holds the blueprint of reality, if it reveals the steps to spiritual ascension, soul embodiment, and divine creation, then we must ask one uncomfortable question. Why was it hidden? Why does a map so ancient, so universal, so powerful, barely appear in mainstream teachings? Why was it buried beneath cryptic language, concealed in mystery schools, encrypted in sacred geometry, and whispered only to the initiated? Because knowledge is power, and this knowledge, the kind that reminds you who you are, is the most dangerous kind of all. You see, the tree of life doesn't just decode the cosmos, it decodes you. It reveals your structure. It reveals the mechanisms of consciousness, the blueprint of soul evolution, the laws of manifestation, and energetic alignment. And once you begin to see the tree not as a symbol, but as a mirror, you begin to awaken the part of you that systems of power have always feared, the part that doesn't obey, the part that knows. Because a soul who knows they are divine doesn't need permission, doesn't beg for validation, doesn't submit to manufactured systems of control. And so, over the centuries, the tree was veiled, not destroyed, not erased. That would be impossible. You can't destroy a divine pattern. You can only hide it beneath layers of myth, dogma, ridicule, and disinformation. You see glimpses of it in ancient Egypt, encoded in the pillars of Karnak and the symbology of Thoth, in early Christian mysticism, where Christ was sometimes described as the living tree. In Eastern traditions, it's echoed in the chakra systems and meridians, different words, same design. But as organized religion gained power, as empires rose, as colonization spread, the mystical traditions, the ones that empowered the individual, were silenced. The tree was branded as heresy. The Kabbalists were hunted. The mystics were burned. The teachings were buried in allegory, metaphor, secrecy. Only the initiated, those within tightly guarded mystery schools, were allowed to study its pathways. Because this wasn't philosophy, this was activation. And systems that feed on fear cannot survive in the presence of the awakened. So they gave you hollow versions of spirituality, told you God was outside of you, taught you to memorize but not to feel, to obey but not to explore, to look outward but never inward. But the tree of life never disappeared. It went underground, encoded in tarot, etched into cathedrals, hidden in language, protected in dreams, because those who carried it understood something sacred. The tree will reappear when the soul is ready. And now it's reappearing, not through institutions, but through you. You feel it, don't you? In the hunger for deeper truth, in the remembering that stirs when you hear sacred geometry spoken aloud, in the knowing that ancient wisdom wasn't primitive, it was deliberately suppressed. We are in the midst of what many call the Great Awakening. And as consciousness rises, so do the symbols, the maps, the codes that once guided entire civilizations. The tree is returning, not as dogma, but as resonance. You no longer need a temple to access it. You are the temple. You no longer need to wait for a teacher. The teacher is inside you. When you meditate with intention, you're walking the tree. When you align your heart with your actions, you're harmonizing the Sephiroth. When you turn your pain into purpose, you're ascending the path from Malkuth to Tiferet. This is why it's returning now. Because the earth needs people who remember, who can anchor divine order into a world that has forgotten its own structure, who can co-create reality from a place of love, alignment, and sovereignty. You don't need robes. You don't need titles. You don't need anyone's permission. You only need one thing: to choose to remember. Because once the tree awakens in your awareness, you don't just see the world differently. You become different. And that's what they feared all along. Not a revolution of violence, but a revolution of consciousness. One awakened soul at a time. You've journeyed through the tree, not just as a concept, not just as a symbol, but as a living map of your own becoming. And now you know. The tree of life was never just drawn on parchment or etched in stone. It was written into you, into your breath, your spine, your thoughts, your dreams. It is the divine pattern within you waiting to be remembered, reawakened, embodied. You were never meant to bow before it. You were meant to walk it. To rise from Malkuth, the kingdom, where you learn to survive. To climb through Yesod, where your shadow and memory are reconciled. To harmonize Netzach and Had, your will and your mind. To arrive in Tiferet, the radiant center of your soul. To live with strength, Gevura, and compassion, Chesed. To open the gates of divine understanding, Bina. and limitless wisdom, chokhmah, until finally you touch Keter, the crown, the place where you remember you were never separate from Source. You simply forgot. And in that remembering you are reborn, the tree is not something you climb once. It's a spiral, a living rhythm. Every moment of your life is an echo of its pathways. Each heartbreak is a descent. Each healing is an ascent. Each choice made in truth realigns you with divine order. The tree reminds you that you were never meant to live small. You were designed to be a bridge between heaven and earth, between idea and embodiment, between light and form. And now, that design is calling you home. Because this isn't just about mysticism. This is about remembrance of your power, of your purpose, of the divine structure embedded into every cell of your being. The tree has survived floods, fires, empires, and erasure because it is not bound to history, it is bound to truth. And truth can never be destroyed. The question is no longer whether the tree is real. The question is, what will you do with it now? Will you return to distraction, to the illusion of chaos and randomness, to waiting for something outside you to give your life meaning? Or will you begin to walk, to breathe, to live as the tree you've always been? This is the secret. You don't awaken by climbing. You awaken by aligning. The more of you that is brought into harmony, the more light can flow through you. And the more light you carry, the more others will feel it. And they will remember too. The new world will not be built through force. It will grow through frequency. And the tree of life is the tuning fork of that frequency. You are the vessel. You are the temple. You are the tree. Not in theory, in form. So take this map, not with your mind, but with your spirit. Let it guide you through the chaos. Let it remind you of who you are. Let it rewire how you create, how you love, how you heal. Because this isn't the end of the journey. This is the beginning of something ancient, rising again through you. Now is the time to embody the pattern, to become the order in the storm, to live as the light that the world forgot. The tree of life is awake, and so are you.